everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for joining us for another video. If you're probably wondering why the vibes are a little bit down, well, it's because today we're going to be talking about a pretty unpleasant subject. As many of you may already know, Quiet on Set came out a few days ago and has taken Hollywood and social media by storm. It is a 5-part documentary detailing and exposing Dan Schneider's and Nickelodeon's toxic and abusive workplace environment during the 90s and late 2000s with shows like All That, The Amanda Bynes Show, Drake and Josh, and many others. It takes us throughout decades of harassment, sexual exploitation, discrimination, and even some abuse that not just the women had to suffer through or racial groups, but also some of the child actors themselves that had to work directly under Dan Schneider and Nickelodeon. It's crude, it's bleak, and we will be talking about some subjects that are not suitable for all ages. This includes racial discrimination, gender discrimination, sexual harassment, sexual abuse that may involve children, so viewer be warned. All of this directly comes from the docuseries. We get direct testimony from the child actors, some of their parents, as well as former writers of the show, and generally people that have worked with Dan Schneider or Nickelodeon at some point that are willing to speak up now. I respect this immensely. I think that peeling back the curtain on what these big producers and these big executives do is really healthy, not just for the victim to find some resolution and hopefully create some positive change by being brave enough to speak up. It lets studios and producers know that they can't get away with everything, and sometimes even brings justice to the more severe acts like sexual abuse or sexual harassment. Unfortunately, however, not everybody receives a happy ending or any type of resolution. And not just talking about these specific child actors, but just child actors in general. Putting a child through the very difficult task of becoming a celebrity at such a young age is not the brightest idea I think we've had as a society. And we have seen this backfire time and time and time and time again. Sometimes these actors play their cards right, get lucky, and actually make a career from a young age. But sometimes, most times, the child actors, usually around their adolescent age, they fall into very bad habits, start acting erratically, and usually after a long string of either being committed to mental institutions or a long series of arrests, DWIs, you name it, this seems to be the breaking point for a lot of these young stars. A public meltdown can go a long way in damaging these young actors' careers and their public image, and every time they happen, they seem to get progressively worse until there's just no image left to save. They usually just end up falling off the face of the map, or you just don't really hear about them anymore. This and much more is what we'll be covering today in this video. So make sure to hit that like button underneath, maybe drop a comment of some topics that you'd like to see us talk about here on the channel, or maybe a movie that you'd like to see reviewed. Also, make sure to hit that big red button underneath so you don't miss a single update on the channel. We got great things planned for the future. But without further ado, let's get quiet on set. At the beginning, we're taken through a brief history of Nickelodeon in the late 80s, early 90s, before Dan Schneider, when they were really raking it in with shows like Kenan and Kel, All That, for the preteen young adult demographic. Now, this was before 1993, when Dan Schneider walks through the Nickelodeon doors and starts writing for All That. After showing a lot of promise, not only was he a writer, but he was also made producer and executive producer of All That. However, after 4 seasons, he quit All That to go work full-time on The Amanda Bynes Show, starring Amanda Bynes. The Amanda Bynes Show didn't really do that well, and after poor reception during the 2001 season, the show was canceled and he went back to work on another 4 seasons of All That. After wrapping up production of All That, he was involved in some projects and some movies that I'm really not going to go into because Dan Schneider he's the fucking worst. So after All That wrapped and the few projects in between, in 2004, Dan Schneider came back to Nickelodeon where he pitched a show called Drake and Josh. Shortly after Drake and Josh came out, Dan also pitched an overlapping show to the network that you also may have heard of called Zoe 101. And this is really when his career and his standing in Nickelodeon starts to skyrocket. This guy is pumping out hit after hit after hit. Drake and Josh, Zoe 101, Victorious, iCarly, Henry Danger. And from 2005 all the way through to 2018, Dan Schneider was a god. Not just at the network, but also in the household. When I was young and I used to watch these shows, I would put Dan Schneider sort of in the same column that I would put Donald Trump before 2015. I knew his name, I knew what he did, but I did not know what he looked like. I mean, this guy was front and center for every show created by Dan Schneider, all the way through until the end with the Schneider Bakery. I mean, this man gave us so much creative talent for so many years. Of course, he has to be a fucking sex offender, because God forbid we get anyone with some actual fucking talent that isn't a rapist or a pedophile.
But oh no! Wishful thinking!
In all seriousness, though, he's not actually a sex offender as of now, because this is new. This is very much still ongoing. We've seen this happen before with movements like Me Too or, the Epstein thing. Someone blows a whistle, then everyone blows a whistle, and things come out to light. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens in the future. Despite him not actually being a sex offender and not the worst person we're gonna see in the docuseries, Dan Schneider really seems to be at the forefront. He is the person that created the most toxic environment for over 25 years almost. Dan Schneider really seems to be at the forefront of this piece. All throughout the series, we get a lot of testimony from a lot of different people, mainly in the beginning from Jenny Kilgan and Christy Stratton, two writers of The Amanda Show. They allege that throughout the run of the series, Dan would constantly show off adult content everywhere to everyone. They also allege that they had to share a single salary between both of them. We don't know if this is true, but we do know that they went to court and Nickelodeon did settle, so it more than likely is true. And probably the most egregious of them all. Oh God, those massages are brought up so much throughout the entire docuseries. And Dan himself confirmed this in his apology video, so this actually happened. He would have several female crew members and even some of the actors give him massages. And this is just the tip of the iceberg with the amount of weird shit that this guy has allegedly done. Jenny also tells us that at one point during one of the writers' room meetings, Dan Schneider had Christy Stratton deliver a skit as if she was being sodomized. And she did. That is really disturbing. Christy did not talk about it. Naturally, she didn't want to. Who would? But this is one of probably the worst things that we've seen Dan Schneider do up until now, and it just gets worse. They also relate how during the Amanda Show, him and Amanda Bynes developed a very close relationship. Oddly close. They would spend several hours alone without any adult supervision, whether from the network or from Amanda Bynes' parents, where they would run lines or do other stuff. This has led to a string of rumors online that I'll go ahead and talk about a bit later. Now, this isn't inherently wrong. There's nothing inherently wrong or malicious about being alone with a child, especially in a boss-employee relationship. However, in light of the things we know this guy has done and the things that he's been accused of, it definitely sets off some major red flags. Whether or not these encounters were inappropriate or led to anything sexual, only Dan and Amanda know. Around the early 2000s is when we see one of the worst things that has happened in the history of Nickelodeon that we know of, which was Jason Handy. In the early 2000s, Jason Handy was a production assistant that was working pretty closely with Dan Schneider, whose job was basically to chaperone these kids when they were walking around the set. This was done without the supervision of their parents, allegedly from the network to not have them interfere with production. In hindsight, this was the stupidest idea anyone has ever had in any show ever. Now, once again, there isn't inherently anything wrong necessarily with having a chaperone system, especially when you have a big group of kids walking around a big Hollywood studio with lots of expensive equipment. You don't want to have them running around. This makes sense. Schools do this all the time when going to field trips, churches, summer camps. But this one man was Jason Handy, whom in 2003 was arrested for having kissed and touched a 9-year-old girl. He was arrested and later convicted to 6 years in prison. When the police stormed his home, they found over 10,000 photos of children and over 1,000 photos taken by Handy himself from the girls that used to attend the school, elementary school, that was in front of his house. They also found Ziploc bags containing a lot of memorabilia of previous encounters that I'm not really gonna get into, but it's pretty fucking nasty stuff. If you want to know the details, go ahead and check out the series. So this is pretty heavy stuff. And what I'm left wondering is who approved this decision? Like, I try to place myself, right, in the mind of the person that greenlit a lot of these decisions. You know, it's 2003. The world doesn't fucking suck yet. Okay, this wasn't really on anyone's radar back then. But still, it just seems very counterintuitive. It's so simple. 2 people, a man and a woman, or 2 women. Hell, I don't know how one person ever made it past the drawing board. You always have 2 people, man. You know, yin and yang. You gotta balance each other out. I mean, how did this one guy get full access to emails and personal phone numbers of these kids? And God knows how many kids were actually involved. Thankfully, in 2014, he was arrested once again, unfortunately for similar reasons, and his bail was set at $1 million. I couldn't find really anything after that, nor did I want to. However, in my headcanon, I like to think that he's looking up at the grass in the prison courtyard. At least that's what I like to think. Another one of the cases, and the worst one by far, was Brian Peck. Now, Brian Peck was a dialogue coach that was working on shows like All That and The Amanda Show, once again, very closely with Dan Schneider, and would also be left unsupervised with a bunch of kids. I can't even do that, man. Now, if you've already seen the docuseries, then you already know what's coming up, and it's really dark stuff, so viewer beware. So Drake Bell tells us in the docuseries that over the course of him working with Brian Peck, they became really close. A little too close. Brian would often attend Drake's concerts, sometimes even bring friends. They would spend a lot of time together on set, until the point where Brian manipulated Drake into severing his relationship with his father. Joe Bell, Drake's father, who was also his manager at the time, would be very wary of Brian and the relationship that began to grow. He noticed how close he was getting to Drake, found it to be a little bit weird, and decided he didn't want his son spending more time with this one man. I agree. Joe Bell also makes a really huge impact, giving us his testimony about how incredibly regretful he is for not having prevented this very easily preventable situation. However, during the early years, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. Drake would spend a lot of time going to Brian's house, often staying at sleepovers after his mother took charge of him and his career. Which I am actually going to take a minute to address that, because the docuseries doesn't. Who I don't see anyone talking about is the mom, right? Like, after Drake Bell severed his relationship with his father, he went in with his mother. And now she was handling his career and his life. but she would let her stay in this man's house repeatedly. This wasn't a one-time thing. This was several times a week for months. Even after Drake's father himself told her not to let him near this man, and she still did. And she doesn't even pop up in the docuseries to say anything about it. She just dead silence. I don't know whether I trust her. And once he had hold of Drake, he used the opportunity to assault him sexually. Repeatedly for a very long time. Months, actually. And do you care how much time he served? Put your answers below. 16 months. That's right. This convicted child sex offender who repeatedly and viciously violated a child multiple times over the course of several months only went to jail for 16 months. I think that speaks for itself. But just to rub some deep salt in that wound, I have my trusty notebook in which I have compiled a series of charges that you can go outside and commit right now and get the same amount of jail time or less. Kidnapping, sexual assault in the second degree, burglary in the second degree, assault of elderly, blind, pregnant, or mentally retarded person in the second degree. In other words, you can go to your local senior home, punch anyone in the goddamn face, and get the same amount of jail time or less than Brian Peck. But that's not the worst thing. He went on to work for Disney 2 years after being registered as a sex offender. What the fuck is happening? You know, I was going to do some more research into how the fuck he got into Disney, but I don't want to talk about this fucking guy anymore. You get the point. If you want all the details, I really do suggest you check out the docuseries. Now, Drake Bell and sealed court records tell us that Brian Peck, Drake Bell severely and consistently over the course of 6 or so months, and I don't know what to say, man. I mean, that just fucking sucks. There's no eloquent, there's no funny way to put it. It fucking sucks, man. It really sucks. And I'm so devastated that so many people have just had to live through this fucking bullshit, and they're just now seeing some change. So the documentary takes us through a very specific timeline and retelling of the events, and despite the two actual sex predators, Dan Schneider is a real target here. He has been the longtime perpetrator of incredibly toxic and abusive work environments that has left dozens, if not maybe hundreds of people traumatized for the last 25 years. And the first person that we're actually going to be talking about is one that has made her discontent very public, Alexa Nikolas. You may know her from Zoe 101. Curiously enough, Alexa Nikolas is a person that we see a lot of in the docuseries, especially in the beginning, which makes sense because Zoe 101 came overlapped with Drake and Josh, so she's definitely one of the veterans when it comes to Dan Schneider's abuse. And that's specifically what I want to talk about, is I want to take you kind of like down the line of everything she's made public about Dan Schneider and the network over the last 5 or so years. But wait, before we continue and you start lighting a fire down in the comment section, I do want to let you know that I am going to be taking a journalistic approach to this video in particular. I'm not just going to be talking about the series or about the people, but I've actually done a lot of research in preparation for this video so we can analyze both sides, because at the end of the day, there's always two sides to tell a story. And ignoring either side can be just as ignorant as fucking Dan Schneider. Of course, I am going to be giving my own opinions throughout the video, but there is a lot of research that went into it, a lot of facts that we are going to be looking at objectively. I want to remain as objective as possible. So with that said, let's take a look at Alexa Nikolas' story. Alexa starts her spotlight journey in 2016 when she gets separated from her ex-husband, Michael Milos. Now, Michael Milos and Alexa Nikolas had met when she was 16 and he was 33. They met online, however, they didn't actually meet in person until they were 18. And by the time she was 19, that's when they got married. 2016, they got separated. They filed for divorce, which ended in 2019. And in 2021, 4 years later, she went and put a lawsuit on Michael Milos for emotional and financial damages. The lawsuit claimed sexual battery, gender violence, infliction of emotional pain, and she also claimed that he had groomed her when she was a minor. However, like I said, they didn't actually meet in person or have any sort of sexual contact until she was already 18. However, the following year in 2022, Alexa herself pulled the lawsuit, to which Michael Milos just Uno reversed her and gave her a lawsuit for malicious prosecution, but it was thrown out eventually and nothing really came out of that. But it is relevant, I promise. That to me seems like strike one. I think when anyone's credibility, not just the celebrities, but anybody's credibility is taken into question, I think it's important that we focus on the past rather than just the present. But I also believe in giving people the benefit of the doubt. So how does this relate? We're about to see. After the lawsuit in 2022, Alexa decided to take on social media to go after her former co-star, Jamie Lynn Spears. This was after Jamie Lynn Spears had published her memoir, Things I Should Have Said, in which Jamie Lynn accused Alexa of spreading rumors and lies when they were together on set. And Alexa is alleging the opposite, that Jamie Lynn is a liar and that she was the one that was spreading the rumors. As to who is to be believed, it's anyone's guess. This really is one of the less important matters of stuff that we're talking about. I bring it up mostly because of Alexa Nikolas' credibility. She has made a lot of allegations against a lot of people, and that definitely makes me want to press the doubt button. And this isn't the only member of the Spears family that Alexa Nikolas has had a problem with. Alexa Nikolas tells us that one time Britney Spears, when she was pregnant and Jamie Lynn and Alexa were working on Zoe 101, Britney Spears yelled at her. And that was it. We did find out later that Britney did apologize. And the reason why I bring it up is, once again, it just seems like one of those things where it seems really unimportant that someone yelled at you one time several years ago. In 2023, Alexa Nikolas came out to the spotlight, this time bringing out allegations against Jonah Hill. She alleges that Jonah Hill forced himself on her one time when he was 24 and she was 16. Now, this didn't really branch into anything, lawsuit charges or otherwise. In fact, Jonah Hill's lawyer went on to call her demonstrably unreliable, a serial accuser who has made assorted accusations against multiple men in the entertainment industry. And that to me looks like strike two. Every allegation that I hear makes me less and less persuaded to believe her. And that's really not a good thing, especially when you actually have something to tell. I truly believe that Alexa Nikolas has nothing but good intentions in her heart. I don't think this is some sort of ploy of spreading misinformation to gain attention. However, I'm not 100% convinced that she's 100% truthful 100% of the time. Also in 2023, Alexa Nikolas went on a podcast where she brought up a lot of the issues that I had previously talked about, as well as bringing up some new allegations against Dan Schneider. That's right, it was all connected. She alleges that Dan Schneider would walk around set with a camera and a big fat wad of cash, and he would pay the parents of the actors to let them photograph the kids' feet. If this is true, however, I wasn't able to find any corroborating evidence from a co-star or a cast member that has said this as well. So once again, I don't know whether to believe her or not. I'd rather not, because that's really fucking gross. But maybe it is. In August, she also protested outside of the Nickelodeon studios in Burbank, to protest Dan and the network. The group is called Eat Predators. It is a group that she herself founded, and it is made up primarily of fans and supporters as well as other survivors. Unfortunately for her credibility, once again, there don't seem to be any members in the group that have some direct insight into Dan Schneider's alleged abuse. And this is something that I really want to talk about. Because unless you have the IQ of my toaster, then you know that I'm not attacking anybody, I'm not defending anybody, I am not necessarily supporting either side. He's creepy as hell. I wouldn't let him around any kids ever at any time under any circumstance. But I don't think that even Dirty Dan deserves to be scrutinized over lies. He deserves to be scrutinized because of what a fucking asshole he is, but not because of lies. You get the idea, and I think I've made my opinions of Alexa Nikolas pretty clear. Was she abused? Yes. Was she traumatized? Clearly. Does she deserve some form of resolution? Absolutely. However, when it comes to the allegations that she has made in the past, she has not always proven to be super reliable. So I'm not really inclined to believe her in many of the allegations that we see in the docuseries or that she's made elsewhere. But with that, let's go ahead and move on to Amanda Bynes. Probably the biggest and most enigmatic piece of this puzzle that unfortunately we dropped in the sofa cushions and we can't put it together now. Amanda Bynes is a huge talking point in the show, mainly as to what sort of relationship she had with Dan. Because as I mentioned before, no one really knows. With so much time that they would spend alone, it leads many to speculate that things have or may have gotten inappropriate or even sexual. And whether or not that's true, Amanda's really the only one to say. But she hasn't been in the public spotlight in over 14 years and has been out of the public eye until the documentary dropped. After a long series of arrests, mainly having to do with driving, whether it's intoxicated or without a license, she was committed to a mental institution, and in 2013, her father filed for a conservatorship. Why the fuck do conservatorships still exist? I'll never know.
How dare you, Mr. Spears? You had me fooled. And you too, Mrs. Spears. Death to all of them.
A lot of the rumors that seem to be circulating online is that Dan Schneider got Amanda Bynes pregnant at 13 and she had an abortion. Some even speculate that she was lobotomized so she couldn't talk about it. As ridiculous as this sounds, this rumor comes from two places. The first place is the dumpster of humanity itself, Twitter. About 10 years ago now, a very mysterious Twitter account came into existence by the name of Ashley Banks. This Twitter handle became extremely popular after a series of rapid-fire tweets that made some very serious claims that she was in fact Amanda Bynes in secret. The account also made claims that Dan Schneider had gotten her pregnant when she was 13 and she had to get an abortion. Also that her father had touched her after he had filed for conservatorship. And there's some more tweets regarding abuse and her father, but we're not really going to get into those. This account was discredited by Amanda Bynes' official account. However, shortly after, Ashley Banks took to Twitter and said, "I've been forced to deny this account to prevent them from getting me committed against my will." Again, another user going by the best Twitter handle I've ever heard. "It's the law, bitch."
Bitch!
He went on to express how he wasn't 100% convinced that this was Amanda Bynes because of several reasons. One of them being that if anyone ever wanted to get in contact with the Ashley Banks account, you had to sign an NDA that she would send you and then you would send back signed. But that doesn't really make sense because if she was in conservatorship, she couldn't have drafted up an NDA. Not only that, but I'm gonna be honest, even I started to believe that this was an actual Amanda Bynes secret account. Until I saw this. I think the odds of this account being Amanda Bynes' secret are 30-70, but is there a chance? Absolutely. The second reason that people seem to be really believing this theory is a couple of clips that have resurfaced online about the Amanda Show, where Dan Schneider makes a couple of really weird, really specific jokes very close together. Now, you might say that people are just reading too much into this, but take a look.
We're just trying to do a little TV show.
On an empty stomach?
What?
It looks like you could use a pretzel, that's all I'm saying.
I'll take 398.
Buy 400 and get a free baby.
Done.
Okay, I'm gonna need some help passing these pretzels out.
As far as now, the Twitter account just seems to be an opportunist, just trying to make a quick buck or something. And the clips, while they are strange as fuck for sure, it's nothing out of the realm of possibility for Dan Schneider's caliber of comedy, which isn't exactly high art.
Peter, don't. They say if you watch that video, you die.
Ah, that's a lot of baloney.
Choo choo! Choo choo! Woo woo. Yay!
Amanda Bynes has not come out to give any sort of comment about Quiet on Set or any of the allegations that are being made. However, as I had previously mentioned, she has rejoined social media once again. I think right now she's about 350,000 followers or something. And she's actually studying to be a manicurist. She's decided to stay within her life away from the spotlight, and she seems to be living a really happy life, which I, for one, am really glad for. Now, the one star that we do know for a fact was sexually abused was Drake Bell. I'm not going to go ahead and get into every little detail about Drake Bell because I've already talked about it earlier, and there's a whole lot of coverage as well in the docuseries, so if you really want to know all the details, I would suggest checking it out. What I will talk about though is something that a lot of people seem to be bringing up, and this is Drake's previous legal trouble. When I heard about what had happened between Drake and that young girl, I didn't know anything about it. I'd heard about it on the news maybe, but now that I'm making this video, I actually took the time to research because it is brought up in the docuseries, and it turns out that I had actually made him out to be worse than he actually was. If you don't know anything about this, 3 years ago, Drake Bell pled guilty to a charge of attempted child endangerment after a supposed relationship that he had with a fan through social media. Now, this fan was 15 years old at the time, and Drake was early 30s, 34, 35, I don't remember exactly. She went to one of his concerts, and they had something happen. What that something is, it's still a little bit unclear. What we do know is it wasn't anything explicitly sexual. Now, the girl pled in court that she had received multiple pictures of Drake Bell and had also been involved with him sexually multiple times, sometimes coerced. Now, this sounds pretty bad, right? However, the actual charge filed is attempted child endangerment. It had nothing to do with being sexually involved with a minor. The charge simply implied that there had been some form of misconduct on Drake's behalf, but there's no evidence to support the fact that it was ever sexual. And not only that, but they later found out that the girl had lied about most of her testimony, and the only real issue that Drake had was that he wasn't aware of her age. Once he did find out how old she was, he cut communications immediately. And Drake Bell was sentenced to 2 years on probation and 200 hours of community service. That is a pretty light sentence. Unfortunately, however, for the court of public opinion, Drake Bell became a sex offender. Now, do I condone what he did? Absolutely not. Is it morally wrong? Yes. Is it as bad as I had initially thought? No. He didn't know how old she was. And this is not the first time that we've seen, a young girl lie to get somebody else in trouble when it comes to false sexual allegations. But of course, this is only like a small percentage of girls that actually do this. I'm glad that Drake Bell seems to finally be getting some redemption in his life. Seems like after Nickelodeon, there was just no sense of direction. Like he was doing music and then he was just popping up every now and again. Now that's not the case. As of a few years ago, he has made Mexico his forever home. The people in Mexico love him, and the people in Mexico also love his music. Seems like the perfect opportunity for him to really get a clean slate and put everything behind him, just like Amanda Bynes. Also, it is worth pointing out that Drake Bell is not registered under any sex offender registry, whether in the US or anywhere else. Anyway, I gotta wrap this up. The docuseries, while not being as long as I would have liked it to be, was really well made. And also, I'm really glad that it sparked such a huge conversation online about protecting these kids, and also gives an opportunity for people that haven't really had a voice to finally have one and be heard by millions. Still, it seems that not everybody wants a voice. A lot of fans of previous Nickelodeon stars like Ariana Grande and Josh Peck are calling them out for not saying anything, calling it complicity. Personally, I don't think that anyone should be forced into speaking out on something, especially if it's something traumatic, like this. I'm sure that you may have already seen the tapes circulating online of Ariana Grande doing very nasty things that I'm not gonna show you when she was a teenage girl that Dan Schneider made her do, like, stuff her toes in her mouth, and I'm not gonna do it. If you really wanna know, go check it out for yourself, you sick bastard.
Okay, I had that coming.
What the hell is wrong with you, you sick bastard?
Jeanette McCurdy was really the first one to set this boat in motion. Back in 2022, when she released her memoir, I'm Glad My Mom Died, it sparked a lot of conversation similar to this, but not at such a big scale. It was mainly more focused on herself and her relationship with her mother, which was at oftentimes incredibly abusive and really toxic and sometimes sexual. She also mentions a lot of abuse that she received on behalf of Dan Schneider, whom she doesn't mention by name, but we know. And I don't know this for a fact, but I imagine that Jeanette McCurdy's memoir was a big inspiration to do this project. She definitely planted a small seed that is now beginning to sprout. More and more people are coming out every single day to stand up against toxic work environments, gender discrimination, and sexual harassment. Because these things, believe it or not, have no place in the workplace or any place. I really applaud Jeanette McCurdy and the entire team behind Quiet on Set for really putting this together and speaking their truth.
Mission accomplished. Good work.
Another person that we've also seen in private support is Jerry Trainer. My God, this guy is peak human, man. I mean, I don't even know if I deserve to breathe the same air as this man right here. A lot of videos have surfaced online of Jerry Trainer back in the iCarly days, where he would stand up to Dan Schneider, making sure that his co-stars were protected on set of iCarly. He hasn't come out publicly and commented on this, but I'm absolutely certain that he is supporting them privately and will possibly eventually come out and speak up in the future. After all, he did unfollow both iCarly and Nickelodeon on Instagram, so it seems that after Quiet on Set, Jerry Trainer has severed all ties with Nickelodeon. And who knows, if we would have had a Jerry Trainer on set with Drake Bell, maybe none of this would have ever happened. As a writer myself, I consider that creative writing is abstract. There are no guidelines as to what you can or can't do, and consider where a joke may fit and whether that joke is apt for your audience or not. A good writer manages to toe the line, make the talent feel comfortable, deliver a solid story, while also taking the time to deliver some humor in between. Movies like The Incredibles, Cars, Toy Story have these moments where the writers throw in a casual, mature joke, often referencing sexual content.
What do you say I get someone else to watch the sheep tonight?
Hell yeah.
The writers get it, the adults get it, and we get a good kick out of seeing it because it makes us feel like we're also a part of this movie. Like maybe this isn't just for kids, maybe it's for me too. And this is partly what makes Pixar films so rewatchable at any point, at any age. A bad writer takes all of that and just throws it out the window. And makes jokes and references that have no place being there at all. I gotta be honest with myself, the feet jokes were never really that funny. They weren't funny then, and they're certainly not funny now. Which begs the question, who is this for? By the time Victorious had come out, Dan Schneider reigned supreme at Nickelodeon. He was untouchable. He treated his actors and his crew like dog shit. He took jacuzzi baths with 12-year-old girls in bikinis. I mean, I had originally drafted up a list of everything that I was gonna say that he's done, but I'd rather not. Dan Schneider is the classic cutout of the Hollywood executive. Tyrannical, aggressive, and a fucking nightmare to work for. And this is according to almost everybody that has ever worked with him. Now, to this day, there still haven't been any charges pressed on Dan Schneider, but as I had previously mentioned, this is still very much in development. Who knows what could happen tomorrow, next week? Who knows what other stars might come and say something? I mean, hell, we don't know. Amanda Bynes could come forward and speak up. Maybe she could tell me that she got those $20 I sent on Cash App. God, I hope it's a real account.
Hey, no.
In any case, thank you guys so very much for watching the video. I really hope you enjoyed it. This is part of that new journalistic take that we're gonna be expanding more upon. I had a lot of fun making this one. It was really different, getting out of my comfort zone like this. In regards to writing and pacing, and I really hoped you liked it too. Let me know in the comments below what other topics you'd like to see us discuss in this sort of more serious journalistic take. Also, go ahead and make sure to drop a like and hit that big red button underneath so you don't miss a single upload on the channel. We got a lot of great stuff coming up this year in 2024. Can't wait to show you the roster. I also have my links to social media down below if you want to go ahead and check those out. Get involved in the conversation online, as well as the Oppenheimer and Barbie review that are already on the channel ready for you to watch. But thank you guys so very much for watching, and I'll see ya. And I'll see ya on the next one. Skibbity dub dub dub, yes, yes! Yeah! Oh, you son of a bitch!